It's such a con. Here is tiny Australia, cutting and cutting its global warming emissions, closing one coal-fired power station after another, causing, of course, your soaring power bills when we're actually too tiny to make any difference to the climate, even if there was a climate emergency, which there isn't. Meanwhile, China, the world's biggest emitter by far, has just approved the most new coal-fired power plants in 8 years, 4 times more than last year. I mean, we've been treated like fools. We're getting weaker because of this global warming mania. They're getting stronger. You can't help but think this is a bit of a plan here. Joining me is the panel, Michael Kroger, former Victorian Liberal President, Steve Conroy, former Labor Senator and Cabinet Minister. Steve, thanks for alerting me to this story. How crazy are we?
Well, look, I mean, China are playing people for mugs. They've been doing it for years on many, many different fronts. And, you know, you just got to ignore China's words. You've actually got to look at what they do. And that applies, you know, in foreign policy. It applies in their outreach to their communities. And you were just talking about that with Greg Sheridan. And clearly it applies to their climate policy. I mean, this is a country that demands developing nation status, has the most militarised, largest build-up in its army, navy, air force, you know, armed forces in the world, threatening to invade other countries and other jurisdictions, taking over Hong Kong. I mean, it's just, I mean, I don't know how long this pattern's got to go on before, you know, the rest of the world wakes up to China's behaviour. Just ignore what they say, watch what they do.
Yeah, but Michael Kroger, for me, one of the issues here, I take Steve's point totally, but for me, the issues here, for China, global warming is brilliant. It's brilliant to play against the West. Oh, you know, the climate's this, and you've got to cut your emissions while it doesn't cut its own. You would think deindustrialising the West is actually the goal of the global warming push.
Well, that's absolutely right. And the Chinese are different because people in the West think the Chinese are outside their sphere of influence. So they tend to disregard what happens in China and concentrating on the Western nations. And Andrew, it's no longer about, in the West, in Australia, in America, it's no longer about energy. It's about politics, because, you know, a majority of people believe that the planet is on fire, burning up, that there's a global emergency, and the children are crying in the streets, as we know, and people are saying they're not going to have children because the planet, blah blah blah. So this is just about politics, and people are prepared for the disruption as we go from fossil fuels to renewables. They're used to disruption. A lot of young people are created in the technology space successfully, thank goodness. But people are used to disruption, and they're prepared to pay whatever price and accept whatever pain there is to go from A to Z, because they think it's an absolute necessity because the planet is on fire. And that's how you should read the global energy debate in the Western world today.
Yeah, the point is, even if you thought that, and it's not, I gather there's a delusion there, whatever Australia does won't make a figure difference. So the idea that we've got to flog ourselves to pieces is insane, when China, which might make a little bit of difference, being the biggest emitter by far, is actually going the opposite way. And I don't see any protests outside Chinese embassies. Cut your emissions now. Nothing. But meanwhile, Stephen,
yeah.
I'm wondering
it'd be great to see rebellion extinction. Rebellion extinction down there at the Chinese embassy. We'd love to see it.
Can you believe?
We'd love to see it.
It'll never happen. It'll never happen. I predict it.